Hey, welcome in everyone to the Voice of College Football. We are checking in on OU with the big spring game coming up on Saturday in Norman. And we've got Parker Thune here. We always appreciate Parker checking in on Oklahoma football. You can get Parker's work at KREF Sports, also OU Insider on Rivals. Parker, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. Always a pleasure to jump on the show with you.
Absolutely. Just pretty standard stuff in regards to the spring checklist, the new spring checklist of the last few years, which adds the transfer portal to recruiting and, of course, spring football. Spring game coming up on Saturday. And just your thoughts about where your eyes are going to be directed first and foremost at the stadium before anything else takes it away in regards to, of course, if there's a big splash by somebody, of course, that's going to take your attention. But where's your focus start?
Yeah, I think naturally a lot of people are going to be looking at the offensive line. Oklahoma has to replace all 5 starters from a year ago, and that unit has had its struggles thus far in spring ball. It certainly hasn't helped that they've been banged up here, banged up there, and so they've struggled to get a consistent 5 out there with the first team under any circumstances. And obviously in spring, you want to be able to rotate guys in and out with some degree of liberty, get a number of guys some first team reps, but availability at both offensive line and wide receiver has been severely limited by the typical bumps and bruises that guys are experiencing in March and April. And so naturally, I think that's the biggest question in the minds of many fans is what does this offensive line look like? And it'll be what we see on Saturday will be a far cry from what it looks like when the season begins on August 31st. But no doubt it's going to give you some clues as to maybe who can hold their own and where you could use an upgrade, because this Oklahoma defensive line is very strong and very deep. So if there are any conspicuous weaknesses, they will show themselves on the offensive front on Saturday.
Has anything come out of spring practice over the last, there's been about 13 or 14 sessions at this point that would cause you to evaluate any of these positions or this football team differently than you did 5 or 6 weeks ago?
I don't really think so. I think for the most part, what we've seen from this team thus far in spring has been commensurate with expectations. And again, 4.5 months till the season starts. So a lot can change, much can evolve. The Sooners are obviously looking to make a couple of additions at minimum in the transfer portal in the post-spring window. So they would like to buttress their existing depth, not only on the offensive line, but at defensive tackle as well. Dominic Williams, the ballyhooed TCU transfer, is a guy that Oklahoma is going to host over the weekend for an official visit. So that'll certainly be a possibility moving forward for the Sooners. Regardless, like I mentioned, there have been guys banged up, especially at wide receiver. That's probably the position group that's been hit the hardest. But even so, the Sooners are so deep and so talented at wide receiver that if you didn't know they had guys on the shelf, you probably wouldn't have guessed it watching practice. So all in all, no, I think this team, to me, on April 18th is about what I viewed them as on, say, February 18th.
As Parker hits on Dominic Williams, all freshman, first team All-American as a freshman, meaning on the freshman All-American team 2 years ago, all Big 12 performer last year for TCU. And the feel that I get from the transfer portal at this point, and we're only 2 days in. We'll have another update today, folks. We go live at 3 p.m. Eastern time with all of you, is that basically most of these guys are, getting pushed out the door. That's the majority of players that we're seeing at this point, but it's sprinkled with 6, 7, 8, 10 guys maybe to this point that are guys that weren't pushed out the door. They're all conference type players, and they have some options out there, and they are making a move based on their initiative. But generally, this is a cleaning out process for most of these programs, it appears.
Yeah, and that's what it amounts to. And look, we're shifting more and more towards a full-blown professional model. in collegiate athletics where, hey, everybody's getting paid. And if you're not living up to expectations, well, your contract, as it were, is going to be terminated. And so it happens at Oklahoma. It happens at pretty much every Power Four program these days. You bring somebody in the post-spring window, somebody else has to get kicked to the curb, in essence. I mean, that's what it amounts to. So you got to cut dead weight at a place like Oklahoma, especially as the Sooners make the move to the SEC. And so the harsh reality is that guys who aren't going to contribute, guys that the staff don't believe can contribute, are going to end up in the portal and not necessarily of their own volition either.
Parker Thunes here from KREF Sports. You can join him each and every weekday. That's noon to 3 p.m. Central Time. And, of course, OU Insider on Rivals. A couple additions to the 2025 class since the last time we spoke. 2 additions in April would be Trent Wilson, defensive lineman out of Maryland, and then also the safety out of Arkansas, Marcus Wimberly. Reason to get excited about either one of these two?
Yeah, so it was a big few days for Oklahoma, going back about a week and a half. They got Marcus Wimberly on Saturday the 6th. He showed up for an unofficial visit to Oklahoma, cashed in his little Crimson and Cream poker chip, told Brent Venables that he was all in, and promptly announced his commitment. That's a big addition for Oklahoma. And then 4 days later, Wednesday the 10th, is when they got a little 2-for-1. Not only Trent Wilson, but also Malik Hawkins, the 4-star cornerback from Frisco Emerson, younger brother of Oklahoma freshman quarterback Michael Hawkins. So 3 blue chip additions in the span of 4 days. A lot to like about each of those guys. Wilson is one of the most dominant defensive prospects on the entire East Coast. Nobody in the DMV can hold a candle to that kid in the trenches. He's got length for a defensive tackle, got a great frame, plays angry, very refined in his technique. Definitely somebody that when he gets to Oklahoma, depending on their existing depth at that point, could very well see rotational snaps right off the bat as a true freshman. And then in Wimberly and Hawkins, you get 2 superior athletes in the back end of the secondary. Wimberly, obviously more of a safety. Hawkins is a cornerback, and as safeties coach Brandon Hall and cornerbacks coach Jay Valai continue to kind of revamp that group, which historically has not been good at Oklahoma. I mean, you look at the last decade, certainly it kind of hit its peak in the final days of the Mike Stoops era, or I shouldn't say peak, I should say valley, because that secondary play was atrocious at times in 2017, certainly 2018 for Oklahoma. But ever since, there's been a steady incremental growth back to being able to hopefully play elite football at some point, because in Brent Venables' defense, obviously the expectation is that at all 3 levels, you will be operating on a level that is just as good, if not better, than just about everybody else in the country. That's what the best defensive mind in the collegiate game expects. So getting high quality athletes and high quality people in Marcus Wimberly and Malik Hawkins certainly helps accomplish that mission.
So, Parker, whether this is something Brent Venables has stated or it's something that you have observed or others like you, in what is now, let's see, going to be a 3rd cycle for Brent Venables. With the move to the SEC, is there a change in geography? Is there a change in style of player? Anything that's changed in the approach dealing with what this league is going to be presenting?
I would say that in general, they're recruiting bigger bodies up front in the defensive trenches. That's kind of one thing that stands out to me. They're certainly recruiting more speed at wide receiver. Those are 2 things that it would appear that the new staff has placed an emphasis on. And then I look at the secondary, and the Sooners are just recruiting a better caliber of all-around athlete in the secondary than they have been in recent years. You know, it used to be under the direction of former defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. The Sooners were recruiting enormous safeties, 6'2", 6'3", 200-pound guys. They'd go get similar sized dudes to play cornerback, but they weren't all that athletic. They weren't all that refined. They weren't all that technically sound. And so I think Oklahoma's kind of struck a happy medium between being able to go find SEC ready bodies, SEC ready phenotypes, but also guys that don't just look the part, but play like it. That as the old adage goes, Oklahoma had a lot of guys 4 or 5 years ago that looked like Tarzan, played like Jane. And these days, the Sooners, while they might not have a bunch of 6'4" Leviathans roaming around in the back end of that secondary, they're also not going to be subject to coverage busts and the like with the same frequency that they once were.
And then really all I've got left for you, Parker, in a pretty quiet spring for Oklahoma, which is typically a good thing, is just in regards to even the big brands, there's a cycle, meaning that the expectation is huge. If you're at Oklahoma, you're playing for a championship every year. However, there are certain reasons to believe in certain years, okay, we've got the group here. We're loaded. We're well stocked. We're gunning for it versus, okay, we still have high expectations, but this year may not be the year that this team can truly compete. Of course, you got the wild card factor of entering the SEC, but how do you see this team being championship ready and prepared if everything goes well on schedule? Do they have that type of personnel?
They do, Mark, but that's where I think you have to draw the line between capability and expectation. Does Oklahoma have the capability to compete here in 2024 with just about anybody in the SEC, save for probably Georgia? Yeah, I think so. And I think most would agree based on what they got coming back. 9 of 11 starters on the defensive side of the ball, including 2 guys that could have been day 2 NFL draft picks, and Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman. And then you flip over to the offensive side of the ball, very deep receiving core, backfield with a lot of impressive pieces, and Jackson Arnold is the trigger man in the offense. There's a ton to get excited about, and there is, on paper, a great deal of talent on this Oklahoma roster. Talent that, again, could go toe-to-toe with anybody in the conference, save for Georgia, which is just, they're kind of on a different level right now. But I will say this, again, the difference and the distinction that you have to make is capability versus expectation. Oklahoma has that capability. I'm not sure that folks should necessarily have that expectation, because the Sooners were 6-7 in 2022, just 2 years ago. Last year was an improvement. They went 10-3 in the Big 12. Yeah, it lost a couple of games they probably shouldn't have lost. Really choked the game away against Kansas, and did the same the following weekend against Oklahoma State. The bowl game against Arizona, things just kind of fell apart down the stretch. So it was certainly a vast improvement over 2022 for the Sooners, and you would expect that there is another improvement on deck. However, does that improvement necessarily reflect in the record at the end of the year? Because it's a different ball game in the Big 12 and the SEC, right? So could Oklahoma win double-digit games again? Absolutely. Will some folks expect them to win double-digit games again? No doubt about it. But again, in my eyes, I think if you're trying to keep a level head about the Sooners as a fan, you kind of have to have the understanding that, yes, they have the capability to be very, very good, to be a college football playoff team even in 2024. But to have that expectation still might be a little bit premature.
Makes total sense, as it typically does. From Parker Thune, KREF Sports, Monday through Friday, noon to 3 p.m. Central Time. And also, of course, OU Insider on Rivals. Anything at either destination there that people need to know about?
No, I mean, the KREF app, if you're a Sooner fan and you don't have that app downloaded, that's the easiest way to make sure that you can get live OU programming 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. wherever you go across the contiguous United States or the world for that matter. And then again, OUinsider.com is a real exciting place to be right now. I'll give you this heads up. If you're a recruitnik, if you're a recruiting fanatic, we've got a list of 76 expected visitors and counting for the Sooner spring game over on OUinsider.com. So come hop on board.
Parker, appreciate you stopping by. As always, know you've got a ton going on, so thank you so much for being here.
Of course, Mark. Like I said, always a pleasure.
Parker Thune checking in from OU Insider. We so much appreciate Parker. We'll stay on here for just a second to explain a few things. This is our Oklahoma live show. As you can see on the banner there, we did this for roughly 144 consecutive weeks. Each week because we had a co-host situation. However, we've not been consistent with our live presentations here in the last few months. We hope to be able to do that again. If you've got any suggestions, recommendations, requests on guests that we can reach out to, we've got Parker, we've got John Williams that we contact on a regular basis, but neither one of them is able to show up each and every week. So we would like to be able to get back to a regular schedule here to deliver Oklahoma football content for all of you on a regular basis and have more interaction with the conversation in the chat as well. So please let us know in the comment section who you would like to see, who we can reach out to. And if you have any further contacts beyond that in regards to you can place us in direct contact with someone or have any recommendations again for OU content. We've got a live show coming up on the main channel at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Transfer portal update. We've gone live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time each day this week. We will do so again today. We've got the All Clemson show coming up at 7 p.m. Eastern Time over on the Clemson channel and then on the national channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern Time. Running down ACC Network and SEC Network ratings with Tony Altamore and breaking those down. All right. And considering all that's being speculated about realignment, those television ratings give us a good look into the power of these brands and these particular programs and what they can expect to draw in terms of the continued sizing down, most likely, of college football. So we appreciate you stopping by here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for our transfer portal update.